Good morning, everybody. How are you all coping? Britain bracing for record-breaking temperatures today as the heat wave that's gripped the country reaches its peak. The mercury expected to rise to more than 40 degrees. And it's been the hottest night on record from what we can see overnight, with a temperature of 26 degrees recorded at Emley Moor in West Yorkshire. We're just waiting for official confirmation of that a bit later this morning. But our infrastructure is feeling the heat, with trains cancelled, roads melting. And yesterday, even some flights suspended at Luton. Why? Because the tarmac melted. This is the scene across West London right now. A level 4 heat health emergency has been declared for a second day, meaning even if fit and healthy people are in danger from the extreme heat. An amber warning already covers much of England, all of Wales and southern Scotland. A red warning for extreme heat is now in force. That's for an area starting south of London and reaching as far north as Greater Manchester and York. On the roads, motorists have been warned to bring emergency kits as 15 to 20% more breakdowns are expected during the heatwave. Network Rail and Transport for London have urged people only to travel if absolutely necessary, as hundreds of trains have been cancelled. No services will run between London and North East England this afternoon. The Department for Education is not instructing schools to close, but some schools will allow children to leave early or wear PE kit so that they're more comfortable. And the government is advising people to work from home where possible. Aisha Saeed reports for us now.
As temperatures soared, the impacts of the heat wave became clear. And when it came to travel, air and rail disruption was widespread. Luton Airport grounded flights after the runway buckled in smouldering temperatures. Here at Lickey Hills in Worcestershire, wildfire engulfed nearly half a square kilometre. It took 4 fire crews to stop the blaze spreading. Wales has already reported its highest ever temperature after it hit 37.1 degrees in Flintshire, and it's expected that records will be broken again today across the UK. A 16-year-old boy died after getting into difficulty in Berkshire's Bray Lake. Emergency services are facing an increase in call-outs. London Ambulance Service has already seen a 30% rise in calls since last week. They're braced for even more. Like care homes across the country, here in West London, they're taking extra precautions to keep residents safe.
Boiling. Hopefully tomorrow we won't be paddling down the road.
Too hot for me. I have to be careful because my skin is very tender.
They are put in a place area in the care home that is cool, making sure that the windows are closed, curtains are closed. And we also put them like a basin of water and some wipes that to just stop them like that on the exposed areas of their body.
These weather patterns are set to become more common. As climate change pushes up average temperatures, extreme heat is likely to be part of our future. Aisha Zahid, Sky News.
Well, joining us now is Transport Secretary Grant Shapps. It all falls on him. Why are we so underprepared?
Well, we've never seen temperatures like this, like literally ever. This probably the hottest day in history. And a lot of our infrastructure is just not built for these types of temperatures. So on the railways, for example, and I've tested this and queried it very hard, but it's not just the 40-degree temperatures we might hit outside. On the ground, those rails can be heating up to 50, 60 and hotter, and that means they're in serious danger of buckling. So you end up having to run the trains slower over them, and that, of course, causes disruption as well. But gradually, we're having to upgrade all the infrastructure, including the overhead lines, which are gradually being replaced with the types which won't sag even in extreme temperatures, but that's a whole new thing the country needs to get used to.
Bob Ward, who's Head of Policy and Communications at the London School of Economics, says there's no excuse. He said, we've been reporting on this heat wave and we knew it was coming, and we should have done more about it.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly knew it's coming for the last few days. Obviously, we've been seeing it in the papers. This is infrastructure.
More global warming.
Yeah, I was going to say this infrastructure, the things which take decades to build and replace. 3 years ago, when I became Transport Secretary, quite literally one of the first conversations I had with the Chief Executive of Network Rail, Andrew Haynes, was about these overhead lines on the railways which tend to sag in heat. And he talked me through the new upgraded specifications which are going onto the railway lines, where they can withstand much higher levels of temperature. And we're going to see this a lot more regularly. We know that. We've seen many of the hottest days ever recorded have come in the last 10 to 15 years. So we're going to see this more. It's a huge infrastructure to replace. And
how long is it going to take?
Decades, actually, to replace it all.
So we're going to have this sort of problem for decades to come.
We are. And, you know, ditto with things like tarmac on the roads. And obviously there are thousands, in fact, millions of miles of roads in total. So there's a long process of replacing and upgrading it to withstand temperatures either very hot or sometimes actually much colder than we'd be used to. And these are the impacts of global warming.
Is there a Cobra meeting today?
No, there's a cabinet this morning instead, I think. I'm not aware whether there's a specific Cobra meeting. Today should be the end of the extreme
Hottest day of the year,
heat.
though, isn't it? Hottest day ever.
Yeah, but there have been Cobra meetings throughout, including official
Why did the
ones.
Prime Minister not go?
Well, the Prime Minister chairs cabinet, which is the sort of the ultimate body, as it were. Cobra sits under that. A lot of times people misunderstand how Cobra, which stands for Committee, Cabinet Office Briefing Room, is the name of Cobra. It is literally that. It's a Cabinet Office briefing. Cabinet sits on top of that, so it's more important, if you like. And I know the PM has been keeping in touch with it. He was on the phone to me over the weekend about it, and we spoke about several aspects.
So he
of
just dials
transport.
it in then?
Well, yeah, Cobra is actually chaired officially by somebody called the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, which is a cabinet colleague called Kit Malthouse.
Yeah, we had him on yesterday.
And Kit's job is to look after the Civil Contingencies Secretariat.
Why does the sometimes chair Cobra then?
Yeah, it depends what the issue is. So, for example, when Ukraine
Literally, when the country's melting, is that not a big enough issue for
Well, it's not a big enough issue, but Cabinet is a bigger, if you like, a bigger platform for a Prime Minister than Cobra, which is a subcommittee.
It was last Tuesday?
Sure.
Yes.
But as you say, we know it's been coming for a long time.
So he's complacent about it?
No, I just don't... I know where you're going with this. I just don't...
I'm saying that the Prime Minister should be in charge.
The Prime Minister is in charge. And I just don't agree. And it's a mischaracterisation of the way that these things operate. People think because it has Cabinet Office briefing room ahead of it, it somehow is more important than, for example, Cabinet, where we held a Cabinet last week. There's a Cabinet this morning who's in touch with all his ministers about it. And as I was mentioning, the Chancellor of the... Let me just complete this point. There is something called... Hold on one second. There's something called the Civil Contingencies Secretariat. So that's the organisation within the Cabinet Office that looks after civil emergencies. This kind of overheating, for example. There is a minister in the Cabinet... Well, I think it's absolutely is an emergency.
OK, just so we're clear.
There is a Cabinet Minister called the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, is an old-fashioned name for it, whose job it literally is to do this stuff and look after it. And he's been doing that very admirably. As you say, you had him on yesterday morning.
Yeah, and you don't feel that the Prime Minister should be leading from the front when it's a civil emergency?
So he has been. He's been being briefed.
He hasn't. He's been partying at flipping checkers.
Again, you know, I know you love this media narrative on it. It's just like literally...
That's it. Bash the media. That's what we should do.
No. It's just a sort of... It's just...
He needs to be seen to be leading from the front, and he's not because he's checked out.
No, it's literally not true. In fact, exactly the opposite is the truth.
What is he doing flying typhoons?
One second. Is literally the opposite is the truth. In fact, he's been interested in and involved in the detail of, for example, ensuring that...
What's he doing this for?
Because in the end, he has responsibility for Britain's
He's leaving
security.
in 6 weeks.
So he still has responsibility.
Why didn't he do it 2 years ago?
I'm sure he's been up in RAF aircraft before. He's leading Britain's security at a time of war, and you're telling me the Prime Minister shouldn't be involved?
He's leaving in 6 weeks. He does not need to do a Maverick-style photo shoot like that.
Look, that's your view. I don't
think it's
agree
only
with
my
you.
view.
I don't agree with you because, in the end, the Prime Minister is in charge of this country's security. There is a war going on in Europe. Why on earth would he not go and meet with the RAF on
because
a
we've got a
routine
civil
training
emergency
plan?
with the heat rising higher than it's ever been before.
It's quite possible to do two things at once, Kay.
Obviously not. Reports that Rishi Sunak spoke to Liz Truss after the Channel 4 debate on Friday and said why are we doing this? This isn't working. What was he talking about?
I'm not privy to the specific conversation, but I do think that there's already been 2 debates, public debates, as well as many different hustings for the actual electorate at this point, which are the Conservative MPs. And I think they took the decision collectively as candidates to say, actually, they wanted to focus on this stage, which is in the House. I'm sure when it goes out to the last 2, there'll be opportunity for more debates, and no doubt Rishi and others will join that debate.
Well, we haven't heard their views on things like housing when they've gone up against each other, or health, or even really what's going to happen as far as strike action is concerned. So let me put it to you, given that you're representing Rishi Sunak this morning, what's he going to do about sorting out the housing crisis?
Oh, well, I'm sure he'll have very comprehensive plans for
What are they?
housing. He'll be outlining them in the later
Could have done
stages
them
of
this
the
afternoon,
conversation.
this evening, couldn't he?
And I know that you would have loved to have had them on your programme, of
Well,
course.
I think my
get that.
viewers should have the opportunity
And I
to
know
hear
that
what they
some
say.
of your viewers may have caught them both on ITV and Channel 4 previously.
They have
and
their
the
own
debates.
questions that they wanted to put to the
I
whoever
understand.
would be, if I may finish, who would be the next Prime Minister. 0.3% of the electorate will decide who the next Prime Minister is. My viewers surely have, unless they're Tory members, have a right to put questions to whoever would want to be the next Prime Minister.
Of course, and there's still...
But they've been told they can't.
Well, hold on a second. There's still, 7 weeks to go until the Prime Minister's selected. There's plenty of opportunity to do that.
Only
We're
from
in
the
a
final
phase...
2.
That's right, from the
But
final
what about
2.
the others?
Well, this way you get to... At this stage, it's only MPs, as you've mentioned, who get to narrow it down, whittle it down to the final 2. When it's in the final 2, anyone who's a party member, everyone's welcome to join at conservatives.com.
You've lost a few members, haven't you?
Can sign up. Although, actually, I should mention, just for...
You can't vote.
You can't vote if you join right now,
Yes,
but
we know
normally
that.
you can join. There's more members now than when, for example, I was party chairman under David Cameron. So
Yes,
membership's gone up.
0.3% of the electorate, not the population.
Of course.
What about health? How will you tackle the
but-
crisis in the NHS?
Just to finish.
That was another topic
Just to
that
finish
wasn't
this point.
discovered. Well, let me just ask you that one, because it was another question that was put by one of our viewers who can no longer ask the would-be Prime Minister. How will you tackle, this was a question, how will you tackle the crisis in the NHS, a lack of access to GPs, especially face-to-face, hospital waits, ambulance waits, and how will you fund your plan?
Yeah, I mean, and these are all questions that
Reasonable questions,
that
yeah.
your viewers will be able to put, I'm sure, to the final 2, because I'm sure that Rishi and whoever the other candidate is, if it is those 2, will be able to will be happy to submit themselves to debate. So
just to
it's not that
clarify-
people
just to
won't get the
clarify-
opportunity
just
to
to
do
clarify
this.
then, is Rishi Sunak saying that he will do a head-to-head debate with Liz Truss or Penny Mordaunt on Sky?
Well, first-
before the
I was going to say, first of all, to take nothing for granted, Rishi has to get through to the final. I've no doubt at all that there'll be further public TV debates,
That
and
wasn't
at
my question.
that point, I'm sure he'd be happy to do it.
So will he appear on Sky News as a head-to-head
I
debate
can't
with-
commit Rishi's time to Sky News
But you-
specifically, but I'm
But
certain.
you're saying that there will be an opportunity for my viewers to put questions to your candidate.
I'm now unclear whether this conversation's about whether he specifically comes on and the candidates come on Sky News or
Yes,
just
so
on
that
TV
my-
debates.
so that my- no.
Because they have done 2 TV debates.
And as I said, surely, are you saying that the Sky News viewers who are watching this morning are less valued?
No,
by
I'm
the
simply
candidates?
saying they've already done. I realise he hasn't come, and the other candidates haven't come on your programme, but it is the case
So
that I'm
the
sure they'll be
questions that my
delighted
viewers have got
to
this
go on
morning,
TV.
Will they get an opportunity to?
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
On
And
Sky News.
I don't know whether it will be on Sky.
Okay,
You
just
and
to
the other
clarify.
broadcasters and the candidates will have
Anybody
to sort
think
that
they
out.
were running
but on
scared?
television.
I don't know. Yeah. So let's go back to that health question then. Given that they might not be able to ask the question, the lady that posed the question works in the health service, and she'd like to tackle the crisis in the NHS. She wants to know how you're going to do it. Lack of access to GPs, especially face-to-face, hospital waits, ambulance waits, and how will you fund your plans?
Well, first of all, we put in record funding. In fact, Rishi was responsible as Chancellor for doing that. Due to coronavirus, we've had these huge backlogs. They're starting to get on top of them. I was looking last night at the figures, for example, for waits for operations at the upper end, and those have been starting to come down. It's really important that we make sure that the GPs are able to, people are able to access their GPs, which is something of great concern. And I think things
how are you
like,
gonna do it?
well, I think things like some of the new technology which has been used during coronavirus can really help. So before coronavirus, a very small percentage of patients had the NHS app. Now people have downloaded that a lot more. They're able to access and book appointments.
14 million
for it.
people waiting for an appointment probably
Yeah.
by the end. But by the end of this session, by the time of the next election, if it is by 2024, is that not a priority?
Well, so
for your chat?
a massive priority. Right now, the waiting lists are not at the 14 million
No, but
level,
they
I
could
think.
be.
That's a prediction. That's one of the reasons why Rishi, as Chancellor, has brought in the health and social care levy. Now, that was controversial, of course, as you know, because it involved raising national insurance in order to pay for reducing, amongst other things, reducing the waiting list. So when your listener asks what's going to happen, action has been taken in order to raise the money, in order to reduce the lists, which have grown because of coronavirus, as we all know. So I think
I've got loads more questions, but we're out of time. So frustrating.
Record on
nice
that.
to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Yes, much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Looking at the papers this morning, most of them are leading on the heat wave. The Metro warns, get ready for the hottest day ever. The Telegraph makes it very plain. Record highs, travel chaos, schools chaos, and it's going to get hotter. The Sun says Britain is melting. The Eye looks at the reasons behind the heat and how our climate is changing. Their headline, Earth sends a warning. The Guardian points out that Boris Johnson has not attended crisis meetings about the weather, just being told why he doesn't need to. The Star shows a police officer helping one of the Queen's guards to take a drink of water, the headline, and you thought you were having a tough day. The Times says the race to be Prime Minister has been thrown wide open and also has the pick of the member of the Queen's Guard. Daily Mail says Penny Mordaunt's leadership bid has hit the buffers. Goodness, they've been gunning for her, haven't they? Returning now to our top story, and a number of young people have sadly lost their lives while swimming in open water during the heatwave. They include 16-year-old Alfie McCraw, pictured on the left. He drowned in a canal in Wakefield last Monday, and then just 2 days ago, 13-year-old Robert Hattersley lost his life in an incident in the River Tyne in Northumberland. This morning, emergency services also called off the search for a 14-year-old boy who got into difficulty swimming in the River Thames in West London yesterday. They believe he's drowned, the fifth person to die in open water since Saturday. Let's get more now on how the heatwave is affecting different parts of the UK, should we? Lisa Dowd is standing by for us at Leicester Market this morning. It's going to be scorching where you are, isn't it?
It is. We are right in the middle of the red zone here, and usually this market hall would be teeming with traders setting up. Actually, there are just a handful here today. I'm told many have taken what they're calling emergency holiday. It is just too hot for them in this hall. They describe it as a kind of greenhouse, just too hot for them to handle. And currently the temperature in here already, I don't know if you can see this, it's around 20 degrees, so already scorching. It was the hottest day of the year in Leicestershire yesterday, like elsewhere in the East Midlands, and they recorded 35.3 degrees over in Market Harborough. Likely it was even hotter here in the city. It's just that they do not monitor it. And so hot, in fact, just around the corner, they've had to close the city's man-made beach and fun fair. The authorities are so worried about children burning their feet on the sand and the generators not being able to cope in the heat. That is how serious they're taking it here.
OK, thank you. Still to come on the programme for you this morning. Sun Safety joined by a young footballer who was diagnosed with skin cancer 2 years ago when he was just 18. Speak to a farmer about the impact of the extreme heat and dry weather on agriculture. Speak to an expert about how we can future-proof our buildings and cities as our weather becomes more extreme. Let's bring you some news just in on the UK labour market, should we. Standing by is Paul Kelso, our business correspondent. Hi, Paul, what's the latest?
Morning, Kay. We've got some more information from this curious labour market the economy is struggling with at the moment. And there's some good news in there, and there's some bad news that your viewers will already be feeling in their pockets. Unemployment has fallen again down to 3.8%, which on the face of it is good news for the economy. There are almost 30 million people in payroll jobs. That's in full-time employment. That is a record. Again, would seem like good news, but there are still more than 1.3 million vacancies in the economy. So there's roles in companies that they simply cannot fill because they can't find the workers. And 21% of the workforce, these figures tell us, is still economically inactive. That is, they're out of work and they're not looking for work for various reasons. But the figure that people will be already becoming aware of is what's happening to pay in this hugely inflationary environment. Inflation is running at 9.1%. That's CPI inflation. Well, these figures from the ONS this morning tell us that that means real terms wages, the effect of whatever pay you may be getting, even with a pay rise, once inflation has taken effect, real terms wages have fallen 3.9% against inflation. So even if you are receiving a pay rise, and these figures tell us plenty of people are, around 4.3% is the average pay increase people have been getting in the last quarter. By the time inflation's taken its bite, it's down 3.9%. That is the lowest or the fastest rate of decrease in real term wages since these records began back in 2001. And there is a big group of public sector workers who will be wondering what is going to happen to them given that inflationary downward pressure on pay. Well, today they might find out. It seems that the government will announce pay settlements across the public sector for teachers, for nurses, for firefighters and the police across the board. And it seems those figures are going to fall somewhere between 4 and 5%, which of course is below inflation. We know teachers are going to be okay, or are going to get that 5% because Nadeem Zahawi, the new chancellor, pretty much the first thing he did was tell you in that interview the morning after he was appointed that he would grant teachers between 5% and 9% for the lowest paid. But if that 4 to 5% plays out across those public sector workers, you can expect unions to say that is effectively a pay cut, and pressure for strike action will grow.
OK, thank you. Well, the temperatures may be extreme here, but the situation in southern Europe is even worse, with deadly wildfires in several countries. Thousands of people have been evacuated from wildfires in southwestern France. Heat records have been broken and swirling hot winds have made firefighting more difficult. Extreme heat has also engulfed Portugal and Spain. These fires were filmed in Obaco de Valdeorras in northwestern Spain and are still burning out of control. Fires forced authorities to suspend the train service between Madrid and Galicia. A video filmed from a train in Zamora shows passengers flanked on both sides by wildfires. The train began moving again after a few moments and nobody was injured, if a little alarmed. Siobhan Robbins is standing by for us in southwestern France now. Hello to you, Siobhan. What's the plan there today?
Hi, Kay. I'm in Testebouche. I want to show you the smoke. So have a look at the sky behind me, normal sky. I'm just going to spin round to show you how dark it is down there. It looks like storm clouds. That is actually thick smoke from a fire down there. The cars coming through that you can see are official cars being let through. We're not allowed any further down that road at the moment because overnight there has been a real deterioration in the wildfires here. You can see the police blocking the road, telling people to go round. There have been 31,000 people across this area now evacuated due to the wildfires. We've moved to this area on the coast to try and investigate more of the fire going on there. There's actually two in this region. Yesterday we were at the other side and there we went with firefighters as close as we could into the fire zone. It was mile after mile of dead trees because many of those fires have broken out in these pine forests, people being moved from their houses. Also, the big problem here is the temperature has dropped today, thankfully. It was 41 yesterday, now it's around 29, but the wind is still swirling around, really just adding fuel to the fire, and they're really having big problems here, bringing it under control. We've come to this town, which normally you'd see filled with tourists on the streets, going to get their morning croissants and baguettes. Nothing today, absolutely nothing. It's a dead zone as they continue here to try and bring these wildfires under control.
OK, for now, thank you. Also making news for you, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has said he's considering suspending 28 more senior officials. It comes just a day after he suspended the head of the country's security services and its chief prosecutor. Both were accused of not doing enough to root out Russian collaborators. Meanwhile, the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, is due to land in Iran today for a meeting with the country's supreme leader. Petrol prices have dropped by £1.50 per tank, according to the AA. The organisation says filling an average car could become £10 cheaper within 2 weeks. Petrol prices hit a record high at the start of the month, fuelled partly by the war in Ukraine. Torrential rain has caused flash flooding in New York. Some roads had to be closed and water poured into subway stations. People were advised not to travel until the waters recede. Couples should be allowed to marry on beaches, in gardens and on cruise ships, according to a body that advises the government on legal reform. The Law Commission says existing regulations in England and Wales are out of date and don't work for most couples tying the knot. Now, we've all heard of wedding crashers, but I bet you've never seen one quite like this before. Here we go. Moment, a series of giant waves caused by a tropical storm crashed into a wedding ceremony in Kailua in Hawaii. Some of the waves were more than 20 feet high and sent tables and chairs crashing towards the guests. And this is said to have happened just 5 minutes before the ceremony was due to take place. Oh my goodness me. I bet the bride was a bit tearful. Now, protests are planned in Sri Lanka today to demand the resignation of the acting president. Should we get more on that? Our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn, is in the capital, Colombo, for us this morning. Hi, Dom. Good morning. What's the plan?
Morning, Kay. Well, we're going to have an election tomorrow. MPs will be voting for the new president. The People Power uprising that we saw last week, sweeping through one government building after another, hundreds of thousands of protesters on the streets. That's effectively been put on hold after the resignation of the hated former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and that has kind of created a kind of hiatus. Now, these MPs will be voting for his replacement tomorrow, and we've had an interesting development in the last hour or so. One of the 4 candidates hoping to become president has pulled out. Sajith Premadasa is an opposition candidate, and he seems to have thrown in his lot with one of the ruling party candidates, Dallas Alaparuma, who is now, I guess, the favourite. And they seem to have cooked up a plan together to form an all-party interim government that we would expect to promise elections possibly within 6 months. Now, their main rival, they're running against a Marxist who's unlikely to win, but their main rival is Ranil Wickremesinghe, who was Prime Minister and became acting president. And he is seen as too close to Rajapaksa for the likings of the protesters. So if he wins tomorrow, we could see a resumption of all that massive uprising we saw last week. Now, Dallas Alaparuma is also seen as rather close to Rajapaksa, the Rajapaksa family, who are now seen as disgraced and very much hated. But I think he will be palatable enough. That offer, I think, of an all-party interim government and the possibility of elections could be enough to defuse the crisis. So I think we're going to see more protests today, probably nothing like what we saw last week. All eyes on what happens tomorrow. I think the favourite now is that sort of joint ticket, if you like, the former, or the opposition leader who's a former candidate now, and one of the ruling party candidates. And I think if they win, that could be enough to then allow protesters to come off the streets and for some kind of pause before elections in a few months' time. And the hope would be that could allow Sri Lanka to get its economy back together, because the country is still in crisis and still an economic freefall.
OK, for now, thank you. Now, over the years, many of the UK's biggest bands have made themselves global icons by touring the continent, including these brothers. But now many up-and-coming artists simply can't afford to do the same because of the huge jump in visa and transport costs since Brexit. A group of MPs is urging the government to fix the Europe touring crisis to avoid the wrath of angry musicians, some of whom face bills of £5,000 every time they play overseas. Well, all sorts of ways to keep cool right now, but be very careful if you do head outside. This is one of a number of bathers enjoying the outdoor pool in Inverclyde in Scotland, where temperatures peaked at 28 degrees. I was going to get up and show you the papers, but I'll just stay where I am. The Telegraph has this picture from Bushy Park in southwest London. An unsuspecting swimmer taking a dip with red deer in Longford River yesterday. Our animal friends have to stay cool, as well as we do, of course. It's a great picture. The sweltering conditions didn't put off competitors at the Worm Charming Championships, which is not easy to say for an anxious anchor. And it was in Cornwall yesterday. Teams had half an hour to lure worms out of the cool soil without any digging. How many worms did the whole competition manage to get out? Just the one. And also in the eye, away from the heatwave, the National History Museum's animatronic dinosaurs have pitched up somewhere you might not expect. Peterborough Cathedral is the final leg of their 15-year tour around the UK before they head home to London. Now, I'm going to be coming up very shortly with some talk about sun safety with a young footballer who was diagnosed with skin cancer 2 years ago when he was just 18. What does he do now to keep himself protected from the sun? Top tips for you. Did you get any sleep at all last night? And if you're travelling to work today, is it going to take you longer than expected because the lines are buckling and goodness knows what else? Apparently, it's going to be like this for decades. I spoke to the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, and he told me it could take decades to upgrade Britain's infrastructure to better cope with this weather.
This infrastructure are things which take decades to build and replace. 3 years ago, when I became Transport Secretary, quite literally one of the first conversations I had with the Chief Executive of Network Rail, Andrew Haynes, was about these overhead lines on the railways which tend to sag in heat. And he talked me through the new upgraded specifications which are going onto the railway lines, where they can withstand much higher levels of temperature. And we're going to see this a lot more regularly. We know that. We've seen many of the hottest days ever recorded have come in the last 10 to 15 years. So we're going to see this more. It's a huge infrastructure to replace. And
how long is it going to take?
Decades, actually, to replace it all.
So we're going to have this sort of problem for decades to come?
We are.
Is there a Cobra meeting today?
No, there's a cabinet this morning instead, I think. I'm not aware whether there's a specific Cobra meeting. Today should be the end of the extreme
Hottest day of the year,
heat.
though, isn't it? Hottest day ever.
Yeah, but there have been Cobra meetings throughout, including official ones.
Why did the Prime Minister not go?
Well, the Prime Minister chairs cabinet, which is the sort of the ultimate body, as it were. Cobra sits under that. A lot of times people misunderstand how Cobra, which stands for Committee, Cabinet Office Briefing Room, is the name of Cobra. It is literally that. It's a Cabinet Office briefing. Cabinet sits on top of that, so it's more important, if you like. And I know the PM has been keeping in touch with it. He was on the phone to me over the weekend.
Tomorrow's here. Not sure about that.
About the Cobra bit.
Yeah.
Yes, the Prime Minister didn't chair the two Cobra meetings on the heatwave. One of them held yesterday, one of them held on Saturday, both chaired by Kit Malthouse, who said that he and others like Grant Shapps kept the Prime Minister informed and he was fully engaged in the whole issue. Of course, Prime Ministers can chair Cobra meetings. There was criticism during the COVID crisis of there not being high-level people chairing those meetings. Of course, when it really got going, both the Health Secretary and the Prime Minister did chair those meetings. Kit Malthouse said he was coordinating the response to this and kept the Prime Minister informed. But he, of course, was releasing this video of himself that he filmed of him in a Typhoon aircraft yesterday, which Grant Shapps said he was doing because he is in charge of our country's security. But we're getting a lot of reaction to that, including from the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan. He said it was obviously a joyride and he should be concentrating on matters of state. I must say that did happen last week, but we just saw the footage of it yesterday.
And did he address the debate issue? I'm not sure.
Well, Grant Shapps said that Rishi Sunak and others felt that at this stage, when MPs are making the decisions, they didn't need any more debates, and they may have another one when we reach the final two, who will be decided on by the Conservative Party members. But I think, as you put to him, there are so many issues which remain unaddressed because, of course, these debates that we've already had can't go on forever, including NHS GPs, including this issue of infrastructure and how much we spend on it and how that feeds into the vicious debate about tax cuts between some of the leading candidates. So they won't be challenged on any of those issues in public. They may be challenged in private at Conservative Party hustings, but another candidate will be eliminated today. Voting is at lunchtime. We'll get a result around 3 o'clock, so we'll be down to 3 by this evening. happening. At the moment, it looks like Rishi Sunak is certain for a place in the final two, and Kemi Badenoch is the lowest place, but she does seem to have momentum. So I think we'll see in Parliament today a real scramble by the three women who are fighting it out for second place.
OK, tomorrow's take at 9 o'clock. Thanks very much indeed. Worth remembering, of course, that 0.3% of the electorate are voting for the next Prime Minister of the electorate, which means that 99.7% of you are not. Let's bring you the latest on what is set to be a record-shattering weather day for the UK. And Kirsty standing by for us this morning. Hi, Kirsty.
Hello, good morning. It's already setting some records. In fact, we've had an extremely hot night. You might have noticed that if you've had trouble sleeping. It's something called a tropical night, where temperatures don't drop down below 20 degrees all night. The current record was 23.9. Quite a few places have stayed warmer than that overnight. So when I got up this morning, temperatures had only dropped down as low as 24, 25, even 26, Emily Moore in Yorkshire. So it has been a very warm night. And it's only going to get hotter as that sun gets to work today. Very strong sunshine. Could see record-breaking temperatures. Let's take a look.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
As we know, the Met Office has issued extreme heat warnings, so we're expecting quite a lot of dry weather today. The sunshine sending those temperatures soaring. There's an amber warning in force widely across England and Wales, and a red warning in force across parts of central southern England. That's where we'd like to see, central and eastern England, like to see the highest temperatures today around the A1 corridor. Could be up to 41 degrees. There are a few showers to watch out for, some thundery ones moving in to the southwest of England through the day.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Many schools actually won't be opening today or will close early due to the extreme heat. Let's get more, should we? Saba is at a school in East London for us this morning. Hi, Saba. Some kids being allowed to wear school uniform as well, I believe.
Good morning, Kay. Well, I'm at school here in East London, where it's still open, and they've got their sports day today, but it's not taking place outside as one may expect of sports day. It's going to be happening indoors, and it's no surprise given that the temperature today, the Met Office is saying, can reach up to 41 degrees in parts of England. Now, I've got a thermometer here with me. It's non-scientific, I should stress, and it's only, 7 past 7:30, and it's 25 degrees Celsius. It's the reason why schools like this one, the London Enterprise Academy, will be closing today at 12:45 instead of the usual time at 4 p.m. Other schools in the country have closed for the day. Others, like this one, doing a half day. Some coming in their PE kits as a way of managing the extreme heat. But yeah, this is the case for not just in London, but across the country, Kay.
OK, for now, thank you. Now, of course, the heatwave presents a number of dangers, one of which is skin cancer. Let's get more from someone who knows all too well about that, and that's footballer Cameron Graham, who joins me now. Hi, Cameron.
Hiya.
Hi, morning. Tell me, well, I know your story. Tell our viewers.
So February last year, 2021, when I was 18, I was diagnosed with skin cancer about 5 months after my best friend spotted a mole on the back of my leg. And it was about a 2 to 3 month process to eventually, luckily, got the all clear. So, yeah, it was a bit crazy last year.
Yeah, scary as well, I'm guessing. How are you now?
Well, touch wood, I'm all good. I've not had anything since the all clear. I go for checkups every 3 to 5 months in the hospital, just my skin and stuff like that. And every checkup I've had has been perfect. So long may that continue.
Yeah, absolutely. What are the warning signs? What should people be looking out for? What was it that your friend saw?
So it was just, I was on the beach where I used to live in North Berwick in Scotland, and it was it looked like a freckle. To me, it was a freckle, but to him, it was a dark, small mole. To be fair, luckily enough, he's smarter than me, so he knows what to do in that situation. But honestly, it was small. So look out for anything, small or large. It could be anything.
Yeah. And you went to the doctor. You must have thought, I don't want to waste the doctor's time, but I'm just going to go anyway, just to check. And then when you heard that it was a skin cancer, what did you do then? As you said, you had treatment quite quickly, but it must have been a challenging time for you and indeed for the family as well.
Yeah. I don't think I'll ever forget that day. Going into the hospital and getting told by the doctor that it's stage 2 melanoma. But to be fair to everyone, the surgeon, the doctors that helped me, I got my operation and my treatment started within 3 to 4 weeks, I think it was. So it went fairly quick, and I kind of kept myself busy in between. And obviously, it was hard for my family as well. It was just weird being 18 and saying you've got cancer, which is horrible. And I know it was hard for my family, but luckily enough, we all stuck together and we got through it fairly quickly.
That's great news. What's your top tip for people in these extreme temperatures?
Just look after yourself. For me, and what I'd advise is just sun cream all the time and top it up. Avoid getting burnt because you never know what effect that can have on the moles on your skin or on your skin in general. So just really look after yourself in terms of sun cream.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you're well, Cameron. You also keep an eye on any moles and make sure you go straight to the doctor.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well, farmers, meantime, across the country are also having to deal with the consequences of the weather on their crops and their livestock. Rupert Shinner is with us now. Hi, I think I'm right in saying your farm is Coyton Barton Farm in South Devon. Hi, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us. You've got beef, cattle, sheep, and also some grain. How are you coping?
Yeah, we are sort of struggling through, really. The water table's very low, and actually getting water to livestock, both the beef and the sheep here on the farm has proved to be challenging at times. We've got through it, sometimes by the skin of our teeth, but we've got through it fine, and we're up and running again now. We've had to seek to get water from another source. But yeah, we've managed to get through it. The crop seems to be getting quite stressed in places, which is a worry. But arguably the biggest worry for us on the farm at the minute is the grass growth. So, our cows and our sheep graze the fields, most of the year. And the grass now, it's so dry and hot that the grass has basically all but stopped growing. So we're actually having to feed the grass that we would cut and bale and turn into hay or silage and feed throughout the winter. We're actually having to, instead of cutting it, we're grazing those fields now. So we won't have as much fodder in our stores going into the winter, which is a big worry. And lots of neighbouring farmers are doing the same thing and also feeding silage that they've already made. And that's a real worry for everyone, as to, you normally have this big bank of fodder going into the winter to see you through. And we don't have that at the minute. And it's a real worry for everyone at the minute, I think, really. And also like arable crops getting stressed and affecting the quality.
Yeah, I just wondered about the animals. I mean, because, some of them have got woolly fur coats on at the moment, haven't they? How are they coping with the heat?
Yeah, so the sheep have all been shorn off. We sheared our sheep off sort of a month ago, just before, I suppose just as the temperature started rising from the spring to the summer. So it's very important to make sure they're nice and cool. But with they seem to be all right, but, certainly looking for shade. And with the cattle, we put our bulls back in with our cows recently to get them back in calf to calve next year. But with all this really hot weather, we are concerned that they will get stressed because of the heat, and that our conception rate might well be lower now, and then that will affect our productivity next year.
Okay. Just before I let you go, is that a cow on your hat?
Yeah, it's a cow print hat, yeah.
I love it. So you've even got a sense of humour in this weather. How are you coping in this heat?
Yeah, not too bad. The main thing is just to keep covered up, wear a hat, put some sun cream on, drink plenty of water. It's Farm Safety Week at the minute. And, this is one of those things that extends to Farm Safety Week, really, I think. But one of the biggest things for us as farmers at the minute is the public. It's really, really important for us, for the public to back us up. We manage the countryside around us. If people want to see the countryside managed in the future, in a way that everyone believes in and agrees with and wants to see beautiful countryside all around, then we need the backing of the people. When you're eating your breakfast today, your lunch, if you're eating any time in the future, buying food from the supermarket, your restaurant, whatever it is, please go in there and ask for British produce, whether that's British wheat to make the bread that you're eating, whether that's British pork for your sausages or British beef for your steaks or British carrots for the vegetables. It doesn't matter. We need this support now more than ever. The government policy is not worth the paper it's written on, in my opinion. Through this support, we'll also be able to back up the wildlife that everyone loves, and it's great to see around in the countryside. And also, we are producing the safest, most traceable food in the whole of the world. And it's great to have it here on our doorstep and available. But we really need the public to go out there and just buy a little bit more British produce if you possibly can, please. Thank you very much.
OK, it's great to talk to you. Thanks for being so passionate about what you do. It comes through. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Now, you've been trying to catch a train or board a flight over the past day or so. You may have noticed that the UK's infrastructure is not best prepared for this level of heat. Talking about that, weren't we, with Grant Shapp? He says it's going to take decades to fix it. Same story the world over. As climates shift, cities are having to adapt their buildings, transport and even food supplies to keep up with the climbing temperatures. Let's speak now to Iggy Bass, who's the founder and CEO of Servest, which uses climate intelligence to identify how cities need to adapt. Hi, Iggy. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. So what do we need to do? What are your tips?
Well, I don't think it's a simple solution. We do need to think about how we plan cities, how we think about cooling cities, how we think about fun cities. I think this is not just an event, Kay. We have to think about this as a long-term trend. And as a long-term trend, how do we want to live? How do we want to work? How do we want to plan our buildings? So if we are likely to see more heat waves, and the probability is that we will see many more heat waves like this until we can get to net zero, then that's going to present massive challenges for business continuity. We've seen what's happened at Luton Airport yesterday with the Great Western Rail as well, schools closing down. If this is a trend, then we need to start preparing for this if you want to live differently, if you want to live with this risk.
Yeah, but how do we prepare for it? I mean, looking at, lots of skyscrapers that are going up here in central London, which is where you are at the moment, a lot of them are mostly glass. And so in these temperatures, you need to have the aircon up high in order to be able to keep those inside cool, and on it goes.
No, absolutely. And this is where we need to think about the design phase of new buildings, new assets, new schools, new hospitals. How do we build them in such a way that we can say, well, these need to be a lot more reflective. We need to weatherize these assets in ways that can withstand these types of temperatures. But also, what do we do with the existing stock of assets, buildings, hospitals, schools that we have? How can we retrofit these schools, hospitals, buildings in ways that can withstand some of these pressures that we're likely to see going forward? So, and that's a combination of sort of governments, businesses coming together. Do we have the right incentives for us to retrofit buildings?
OK, it's good to talk to you. Thanks so much for taking the time to explain that to us. Very complicated issue. Come in and talk to us in more detail when you have time. Thanks a lot. Keep cool. Now, to help you get through the hot days and nights, we've collated some of the top tips to stay cool. First up, our top tip for getting through the day. It's important to cool yourself from the inside by drinking plenty of fluids, but avoid alcohol or caffeine. I find that if I have a cup of tea, I get hot, but then I get cooler again. And apparently they used to do that during the Second World War, didn't they? So I'm sticking with that. It might seem counterintuitive, but stay inside and keep your windows closed and curtains drawn to keep the heat out, or blinds if you've got them. And if you're worried about a heat stroke, soak your hands and feet in cold water or apply an ice pack to your arms. And make sure you check in on your friends, your neighbours and elderly relatives, and keep your pets in the shade. Do not leave the dog in the car. And now, how to get through the night. Prepare ahead by sticking your PJs and pillowcases in the freezer during the day, then take them out just before you go to bed. Dump your duvet and use cotton sheets instead, ideally one per person. They will absorb sweat and are more comfortable in the heat. And if your home has several floors, sleep downstairs. Use a fan to help your body regulate its internal temperature. Sticking a pan of ice cubes in front of it can make the circulating air even cooler. And if you have phone chargers next to your bed, unplug them so they don't heat up your devices and thus the air around them. And if you're struggling with the heat, spare a thought for the guards on duty at Buckingham Palace this week. Here are some of the ones who clocked in yesterday, and the temperature was no excuse to leave their bearskin hats at home. One guard was seen accepting something to drink from his fellow colleagues, perhaps unsurprising considering those hats are up to 18 inches tall, made from real bear fur, which is not easy to say. And of course, the guards are known to faint when the heat gets too much. And you would as well, wouldn't you? Absolutely sweltering in the heat. Much more ahead on the UK's record-breaking heat wave, with temperatures over 40 degrees possible today. We've been looking at the sun rising over West London this morning. It's looking pretty hazy, although it's clearing up a little bit now. But do bear in mind that the temperature could be above 40 degrees today for the first time ever. You need to try to stay cool. Don't go out in the sun. Mad dogs and Englishmen do that. Try not to be one of them. We'll see you at the top of the hour.